This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We both lost babies to SIDS in winter 2021.
In the throes of grief, I reached out to a stranger on the internet and our friendship was born.
In the years since, we've been working hard to survive, rebuild, and navigate the continual challenges that have come our way, including divorce,
Job loss,
dating while bereaved,
moving multiple times,
health scares,
pregnancy and parenting a living child,
starting new jobs, and so much more.
We are tired.
Happily ever after is out of the question for us, but this podcast documents our journeys to happier ever after because we believe life after loss is worth living.
So join us as we laugh, cry until we laugh.
Welcome to As Long As I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
I just need to take a minute to center myself here because I'm dealing with some insane things at work today. So let's just put that aside and bring ourselves here to this room.
Yes, listeners, I was just sharing that I have painters in my house today. So Judith and I are riding the struggle bus environmentally, and we have a beautiful, wonderful guest here who is going to bear with us as we attempt to record an episode that I'm sure is going to be wonderful.
It's going to be great.
And our guest's audio is going to be spectacular. So just ignore the rest of us.
Okay, so Rochel, this is Alina. Alina, this is Rochel. Sometimes I say in the beginning, like, this is someone we've wanted to have on the podcast for a really long time. That was not the case, Rochel. You just popped into our lives on a whim. But thank you for being so open-minded to coming on this podcast when you really had no idea what it was. And thank you for being willing to speak to our community in a way that they know you more than you know them, because we've shared some of your writings before, but you don't know them at all. So I appreciate your willingness to talk to a room full of strangers about something that I'm sure is personal and maybe something that you don't talk about every day, all day. So because unlike Alina and me, you haven't lost a child. So, okay, so let's just start there. Let me just introduce our wonderful guest, and I'll let you introduce yourself. But let me just kind of give some context. So, Rochel and I went to college together. This is the thing, Alina. I think I sound like I have all these friends. Because I'm always like, this is my friend.
Judith, you do have so many friends.
This is my friend from the gas station. No, but Rochel and I went to college together, and I will give a caveat that
this is my friend that I met when I took an Uber somewhere, and now we.
But I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna say this is like a friend that I have from college that I don't really speak to often. But it's wonderful to see you. And I would say that in college, we weren't really particularly friends. I think we had a few classes together, but after college, you spent a lot of effort writing and posting your writings on Facebook. So I always kind of saw your writings, and I knew it was going on peripherally in your life because what you shared online was always so beautiful to me. And you have a way to write. And I think I told you this, but at one point I actually printed one of your poems that you posted 10 years ago. I don't even know what it was about, but I printed it and I keep it in my wallet because I just think you're a really beautiful writer. So I shared something that you wrote recently, and I'd like you to introduce yourself and then kind of tell our community a little bit about the losses that you've experienced and the angle that you bring today. And then we thought it would be a good place to start if you could just read what you wrote about Sophie's birthday. And so let's start there, because that's kind of where our community has picked up. By the way, before I go on, Rochel is one of those people that is amazing. She's going to be very humble here, but I think she helps homeless people and does psych nursing, something like that. So don't be humble. Tell us what you actually do.
Well, firstly, I just want to say I know that I may not know your audience members intimately, but we're all showing up with the same heart. And I'm really grateful to be here and to now be welcomed into this community. So thank you for inviting me in. Thank you for what you do with this platform and with this friendship and with your experiences. And to everyone listening for what they're crafting with theirs. Or how they're engaging with it. But I am Rochel Spangenthal. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So I have a master's in nursing, specializing in psychiatry. I did work doing psychiatry with homeless populations for a couple of years. Moved into sex therapy and doing psychiatry for people struggling with intimacy.
That's cool.
And now I'm starting a private practice and currently I work with alternative healing modalities. So somatic therapy, breath work, inner child work, all these beautiful, crazy things that I'm non-ordinary states of consciousness. So that's my professional life. And, personally, I mean, I went into psychiatry and therapy in general because I have a lot of emotions. And I've also experienced a lot of loss. Y'all invited me on here to speak about, in particular, I think the loss of my niece, Sophie, who passed away in 2019 at 5 years old. And yeah, the relationship that I have with her. She had cancer for about 2.5 years. And then, didn't have much of a break before my brother-in-law got COVID right at the beginning. He was 37 and he ultimately struggled for 10 months and passed away, leaving 6 kids behind. And then recently I lost my grandmother at the age of 102. And I was really blessed to be by each of their bedside in the last few hours. So yeah, definitely grief is a topic.
Aren't you lucky?
Yeah, yay. Yay. But honestly, I do feel really, really blessed. I feel really, really blessed. I think that engaging again, I'm humbled by the fact that, again, I have not lost a child, but in my own exploration of grief, it really brings life and what living is to the forefront.
I did follow your brother-in-law's journey because your sister wrote a lot about it publicly, and I think you did too. And it was right in the beginning of COVID, so it was like one of the first people that I think like was in my orbit that got really sick from COVID. So I think about Sophie, and I think about your brother-in-law, and I think about your grandma, and I just think there are very few people our age that have had such significant losses. And when I think about the peers of mine that I know from school, you're certainly one of the very, very few. So, in some ways, I saw you do it first before me. And because you shared so publicly, it kind of showed me that it was possible to live on. And you kind of showed me the way very tangentially in your own unique way. But because I was 28 when I had my loss, or 29, like I really didn't have very many peers who had been through anything similar. So you doing it so publicly, it just I knew that it was possible for some people to live on because your sister had lived and your brother had lived. So I knew somehow that it was possible. So why don't you start by reading what you wrote about Sophie? Because when you wrote this, I shared it on our Instagram, and I cannot tell you how many people reached out to us. A lot. And I myself cried when I read it.
Oh yeah, it was. I cried too.
You cried too.
I saw it on our stories and I was like, who posted this on their stories? And then I realized it was on my stories and it was Judith who posted it. I was crying. Everyone was crying.
I was crying too.
In a good way.
In a good way, and in a way that made me feel closer to Aiden, and in a way that took my breath away, and not much does. I'm so jaded by loss. I'm so, like, I'm not desensitized in a bad way. It's just so normal that sometimes the bigness of it, like, I lose sight of how big it is. It's become just like a normal Monday for me. But your writing really made me stop and made me think and made me remember and made me feel. So that is a testament, to you and your writing. So I'd love for you to share it again, and we can use that as kind of like a kicking off point for our conversation.
Yeah, I would love to give a preface if I can.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
I think that every year as an anniversary comes around, it's interesting, especially with a child. How are you going to commemorate this kid? And I think that, I primarily celebrate Sophie's birthday over the anniversary of her death. I commemorate that too, but I throw a party every year on her birthday. And each year it has been this looming thing of how am I going to honor her and share her with the world. And then you realize like, oh, I have no new pictures to share. Like it's the same slideshow every year. How am I going to continue helping people build a relationship with her? And I have to say that last year was the first year that it was a celebration of joy in addition to the grief, like a celebration of gratitude. And this year, as I approached her birthday, I really just moved into it with like, oh, Sophie's right here to play. And so the writing was in effort to, because I feel that all the time, and the writing was an effort to help other people tap into that as well, that those that we've lost are right here to play.
Can I ask how many years after the loss is this birthday?
Yeah, we're 5 years. No, wait, she would have been 11. So math, six.
Yeah, I'm asking because I have definitely noticed the birthdays feel different every year. And so to hear you say that this one felt very, very joyful in a way that others haven't, I think that gives me like a little bit of hope that, because I do find that they are getting more joyful and in some ways more painful, but it's good for me to hear that. It's nice for me to hear that, I guess, that I have something to look forward to.
Yeah. The relationship is alive, right? Even if these little ones might not be here with us embodied.
You got us crying, and we do this like all the time. So I swear we really don't cry in like most of the episodes these days, but there's something about just the way you're speaking that just gets me so emotional. I feel like part of it is that I know the relationship continues. I feel like the relationship continues, and it's so hard to show other people that the relationship, because there's no new pictures, and so you get like, you sit there and you're like stuck because you're like, oh no, like you don't get it. He's grown, I've grown, we've changed. Like we have to, it's another birthday, you know? It's so hard to explain to somebody, but like I feel like when I go online, like I don't want, if I don't say anything, you know, like first of all, we should ask why you feel compelled to say anything to begin with, because I feel like if I don't say anything, who will? You know, it's like my responsibility to carry on. And I think the other reason why I'm emotional, I'm going downstairs because my Wi-Fi has troubles. It works hard, but it's not so good. The other reason is because I actually think you do it so well. Like, I feel like I know Sophie only because I know you, and you do such a good job of like painting a picture who she was. Like, I feel like I really know her, and I've never met her, and I knew her even before my loss, before I was trying to know all these dead children. Like, I feel like I knew her. So you're such a success story in like introducing these, you know, Sophie into our lives. So, okay. Woo, Alina, this is emotional, and I don't okay, Rochel, hit us.
We're ready. We're ready as we're ever gonna be. There's gonna be more tears.
Okay. Every year I throw a party for my niece's birthday. Tomorrow, Sophie would have been 11. My sister once told me that with time and work, grief eventually moves from a constant heart-stabbing cry for what you've lost to an intermittent glow of gratitude for what you were blessed to have. It has taken years for me to be able to access an embodied knowledge that Sophie's transition from this physical plane was just that. Her death was a shape-shifting. It was a birth into the next iteration of self. Over time, I've accepted that while I may be unable to create new memories with her physical body, I am able to create new memories with her being. I no longer need to go to New Jersey to play with her. Every time I'm able to catch a sunset, she is right there with me, holding it in all of its majesty. Every time the sun catches the mica in the drab New York sidewalks, she delights with me about their sparkle. Sophie is dancing alongside me to music when I'm otherwise alone in my apartment. I know that she is kissing my cheek with each heart-shaped leaf. And when I find myself gasping under the weight of my own self-criticism or overwhelm, I feel her little arm around my shoulder and her little fingers turning my face towards her concerned brow. Her expression was always somehow the most pronounced, even sans eyebrows. And I hear her say, "It's okay, Rochel. Come play with me. Come play, come play, come play." Bringing her energy to my awareness reminds me that it is okay to have big feelings. It makes sense to cry when you feel hurt, because sometimes life is genuinely, devastatingly painful. And she reminds me that if you pay close enough attention to what is, you'll notice that what is changes all the time. That it's perfectly reasonable to shift from tears to excitement at the sight of your favorite food, and to shift from crippling body pain to curiosity when your friend comes over to tell you an engaging story. Sophie is my most constant and present companion. I call her in to share beautiful moments and to orient me during confusing ones. She models for me that while adult rules and standards are cool, childlike wonder and play and immersive presence are, in the end, much more honest. Your favorite color can be rainbow, and one of the upsides of having no hair is putting temporary tattoos on your head. And the most important part of eating cake is painting every nose in the room with the icing. I am grateful every year and every day to know this effervescent child, for all that she was and all that she continues to be.
I don't know why we're so emotional. That was just really beautifully said. And I feel like it really captures this idea of like the child, just like losing a child that's so different from losing a person who's in the middle of their life and someone who's 100 years old and has lived like such a full life. Because like you said, you've lost like your brother-in-law and your grandmother. And how would you say that losing a child has felt different to you?
Firstly, I just want to speak my brother-in-law's name because I realized I hadn't. Yudi Dukes feels important. But yeah, losing it, there's something about a child, which is you wonder how they're going to look, like
Yeah.
how they would look when she's 11. How her interests would change. Like her face hasn't fully developed, her personality is still growing. And so there's this part, like she is forever a child, in a certain sense. And the part of her that's growing and developing is the part of her that like I live with. But I would say that losing a child is something incredibly special, because like children are still open to being tender with the world, right? Like adults, we've learned to shut a lot of things down, but children still wear their emotions on their faces and tell you exactly how they feel, and live really wildly, and so that's what we get.
We've talked a lot about how adult relationships are very complicated. Even the best adult relationships are very complicated. And there's something about a child. It's what makes it all the more devastating when you lose them. But there's something so pure about the relationship that it's so easy to love them, I think. And obviously it's easy to love many people in my life, but it's the easiest to love the children.
But I also think like as life goes on, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. Like there's so many question marks. You get the space to fill in the blank. If you lose someone who's like a known quantity in your life and like how they react to certain things, like there's not that what they would have said, like your grandmother and what she would have said and what her sense of humor is. But like with Sophie, there's kind of like this there's more room in your mind for like creativity. We don't know. We don't know so much. So maybe that sparkle would have lasted the rest of her life and her favorite color would have been rainbow, or maybe not. Like we just don't know. Maybe her favorite food would have been like with Aiden, I feel like there's so many question marks that it gives more space for me to feel like close. Gives me more space to feel the truth could be what I imagine it to be.
What comes to me is also that yes, we don't know, but truth is truth, right? So the things that I carry from when you lose a child at different ages, you'll be able to hold on to different things in the quality of who they are. Like with an infant, you can hold on to their eye contact.
Yeah.
Like their eye contact and their trust is always going to be something that gets to live with you. With Sophie, literally it was just every party was clearly celebrating Sophie. It didn't matter whose birthday it was her party. And that's something that is here for me always. And I don't know if that would be true into her adulthood, but like, okay, it always gets to be true now. Like she always is excited with me about everything. I get to have her little hand around my shoulder, just being like, Rochel. Like she couldn't say the ch, so it's Rochel. Like, don't cry. And I literally, when I am feeling devastated, I get to sit with myself and envision her and just hear her saying like, don't cry. And like, it's simple to her. And so, maybe with an adult, there would be more memories of doing things and we would have had more time, but each of those personality traits, get to be digested and become our own.
Yeah. But to me, one of the things that's so special about your writing is that I can imagine a parent writing that for their child, and the fact that an aunt wrote that for their niece to me feels really special. The way you describe how much you love her and how much she is a part of your life is like, that would bring me so much comfort if I felt my family could echo and do the same. It's like it seems so not I don't know if it's you as a person or it's something that you work on or if it's something you've developed in a way to support your brother or space yeah, I don't know. But I feel like a lot of people who it's not their child have a hard time connecting with them. So what's your sense? Like, where do you think it comes from? How do you feel like you're able to hold on to that relationship? Is that something you have to work on, or is it something that just is? And you're like, well, how could you not?
And I just want to add too, like I know I have felt frequently, and again, I'm so sorry for the background noise, but I have felt frequently like there's like people when they want to be close to Quinn have to be with me. Like I am a conduit to his presence in their life. And so to hear you talk about developing brand new memories and relationship with Sophie without anyone else there, just the two of you, I think is something that I actually like. Part of my family and friends, I think they are perfectly capable of doing that. And and I think they do in a lot of cases, but like, I actually don't think it occurs to many people that that's even possible, that that's even a thing that they could do.
Or appropriate.
Right. And I don't have to be the conduit to everyone's relationship with Quinn just because I knew him the best. I think it's really beautiful the way that you continue to develop that relationship with her on your own.
Yeah. Thank you. There's so many things that come together to form that relationship. When Judith said the word appropriate, I think that when it comes to grieving and mourning, we're really careful about the circles, right? There's the inner circle, like the parents and the siblings, and they get to grieve the loudest. And then there's the second circle of the family members and the best friends and this and that and outward and you only get to grieve loudly if you're in one of the inner circles. My brother and sister-in-law gave me full permission. They like to grieve loudly and to form a relationship with her. I do have to say,
well, how did they do that? What made you feel that way?
It wasn't just since her passing and since her transition. Honestly, like I am an older single. I'm 34. I have no kids. I was an older single even when I was 26.
By the way, Rochel, I want to say what's funny. Only you and I would think that because, like, Alina, she's not Jewish. She comes from like a totally different planet. Like, I don't think she would think that. She's 30. Like, she just met her husband now. Like, I think he's 34. I don't think she'd be like, you're young.
I have been an older single since I was 23. So.
I mean, Alina thinks we're delusional. She's like, you're appropriately aged to be single. Maybe you think when you're like 43, you'd be like, okay, I guess maybe.
I think there's something that all of my friends had kids, and I have nieces and nephews, and so my intentionality very much, like I wasn't occupied necessarily with my own children. Like I lived near David and Jenny, and so like I went there every Shabbos I could when she was sick for a long time, like she got cancer 3 times. It was, and so you realize when you have, because it's a blessing and a curse to have that long, but like, it's precious. And so like, they welcomed me into their home. I would stay there. It's a combination of they really let me love their kids. And a part of that honestly has been really scary because it is terrifying. I am in awe of you and everyone listening to this podcast for whatever reason you were drawn to this podcast, but like to love that deeply, because this was not my child and it is devastating. And so incredibly precious to love a child that deeply. And Sophie, I'm sure we all feel this way about our kids, but Sophie was special. So it was really easy. It was really easy to be obsessed with her.
I think about what you said earlier, like that you had the time and the space to really get to know Sophie. And just to answer my question that I had asked you before, like, Alina, maybe the reason that they don't feel like they can is because they didn't have a relationship. Like if they didn't.
Yeah.
Aiden was born during COVID and he didn't meet my entire family, and he was a newborn. He was a few months old, so he spent pretty much all of his days with me. He didn't. You had the opportunity to really get to know Sophie and to love on her and to spend time with her and to be there with her. And it's easier to maintain a relationship if you had a relationship. If you only knew this baby as, someone else's baby.
Pictures in the WhatsApp chat.
Now, maybe if you were there every day for those 3 months that he was alive and you held him every day, maybe it would feel different. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. But the point is that you fell in love with Sophie. You didn't love her because she was your sister or your brother's child. You loved her for her. So you are grieving her. And Alina, I think that's different. And I think in our cases, the people love us and they're grieving with us, but they don't love our children because, they love them through us, but they don't know them to love them. Just to wrap the bow on my sad thought.
Just to really put a pile of poop on top of the sadness of all of this. It's horrible.
No, but it helps me. It answers.
It's true. It is true. And I think, even people who met Quinn, I'm using air quotes.
They met him.
There are people who met him from 6 feet away.
Right.
And never held him. So like, and I say that knowing that, people who only met him from 6 feet away are some of the people who still have the most relationship with him. So I don't think it's impossible, but I do think it helps if before they die, you already have a relationship of some kind with them.
Well, everyone, that was part 1 of our interview with Rochel. As you heard, she is just such a kind and empathetic and thoughtful person. And
the empathy is pouring out of her, and it was such a pleasure to chat.
We're going to continue this conversation. And you'll hear part 2 of this week's episode. No, wait, part 2 of the episode, next week's episode, next week.
Nailed it.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow.
Yay!